Hello folks, Reginald Scott here and welcome to the video. Thank you very much for clicking on today's video. Today's video was actually going to be originally my response to Hanbini's response to my video, but unfortunately he's given me so much material to work with and to debunk that it's run over on that project, and now I've missed my deadline for today. So rather than not produce a video today, I thought I would just do an off-the-cuff video talking about bottom brackets and talking a little bit about the latest technology news, which is carbon fiber threaded bottom brackets. I watched Raoul's video recently. Raoul is a carbon fiber expert in Australia, very interesting guy, and makes very informative videos on carbon fiber. And he was talking about this new threaded bottom bracket system for carbon fiber. I wanted to weigh in on it, and I also wanted to talk in general about how PressFit is the best system. And I've been saying it for many years. If you go check out this video, which is my really old video on solutions and problems of bottom bracket systems, it's quite an in-depth look into many of the bottom bracket system types, explaining those types and also explaining how threaded and PressFit works. What I love about Raoul is if you ever want to convince yourself never to buy a carbon fiber bike again, like a carbon fiber framed bike again, which I personally believe would benefit you greatly by not buying one, you go and watch some of his videos, because every single bike that's ever been through his workshop, carbon fiber by a big manufacturer, is faulty or poorly made in some way. And he spends his entire YouTube career criticizing and highlighting all the dangerous flaws and faults with carbon fiber bike frames. And then he says that carbon fiber is a good material to make bikes out of, which I just don't understand, because it seems to me that none of the manufacturers can get it right. Now, whether it's just negligence, or whether it's just they don't care, or whether it's just rampant profiteering and they're cutting corners to do that, I don't know. There could be a multiplicity of different reasons why carbon fiber manufacturers never seem to be able to get it right. Threaded bottom bracket versus PressFit bottom bracket. Now, we all realize, I think, that the idea of a carbon fiber threaded bottom bracket is pretty ridiculous. Just for the obvious reason that stands out to me as just a humble mechanic, is that carbon fiber is incredibly soft. I mean, you can scratch carbon fiber with the blunt end of a screwdriver and turn it to powder. You can sand carbon fiber very easily. You can chip and split carbon fiber just by looking at it, kind of thing. So to then make a threaded shell, whereby threads, and I'll show you some threads. So these are threads, right, on this particular bottom bracket. Threads are incredibly thin. Now, this is relatively strong because it's made of metal, it's made of aluminium, but carbon fiber threads, I would think, would be pretty brittle. And the danger of cross-threading, because they're so soft, would be pretty huge. Like when you try and start to put in your bottom bracket and start to thread, that bottom bracket is going to have to be absolutely perfect, and the bottom bracket system that you're threading into it is going to have to be absolutely perfect, because the moment you start to cross-thread that thing, you're going to absolutely destroy it. And repairing it is going to be virtually impossible, I would have thought, because it's not like you can recut the threads into carbon fiber. It just seems like a really bad idea from a mechanical standpoint. Not just that, though. I mean, one of the biggest issues that carbon fiber has is its reaction, chemically or electrochemically, with metal. So one of the issues with previous threaded bottom brackets that manufacturers found, which was what they used to do was make a round hole, and then they would push a sleeve, like an aluminium sleeve, into the bottom bracket, and then that sleeve itself would be threaded, which would basically turn the bottom bracket of a carbon bike into a bottom bracket of a metal bike, right? Seemed like a good idea at first in principle, but it's sort of overlooked a few key factors. And one of those key factors is galvanic corrosion. Now, what galvanic corrosion is where you have two dissimilar materials, it can be, aluminium in this case and carbon fiber. And when water and salts and other things that usually cause corrosion in, for example, steels and other metals, start to get onto the surface of your bottom bracket, you get a chemical reaction, you get an electrochemical reaction, you actually generate a current. And that electrochemical reaction starts to eat away at your aluminium bottom bracket. And I've had specialized tarmac bikes in my shop with these aluminium bottom bracket shells that are basically wobbling like this inside the frame, because the entire surface where it was glued into the frame has been eaten away, and the whole thing just cracks and falls apart. And at that stage, there's no way to fix it other than sending it to somebody like Raul, who maybe can glue it back into place. So that was one issue. And the second issue is expansion and stress tolerances, really. So expansion, as things get hot, as the weather changes, as you go from summer to winter, or you go from inside your heated house or your air-conditioned house to outside in the hot sun or outside in the ice cold, wherever you live in the world, things expand and contract repeatedly. And metal, like thin aluminium, like in a threaded bottom bracket shell, is a perfect example of that. It will expand and contract. And unfortunately, the carbon fiber has a different expansion rate from the aluminium. And that same expansion and contraction separates the shell from the frame. And you end up with the same process as before. The thing breaks and becomes loose. So the manufacturers, in trying to solve a problem, ended up making new problems for themselves. So now what they're trying to do, like I say, is thread directly into carbon fiber, which is just moronic. I think I've even mentioned in previous videos before they came up with this idea that you can't thread into carbon fiber because it's just not strong enough. You'll bust the threads easily. But what they're doing in trying to get rid of the issue of the aluminium sleeve inside the frame, what they've done is they've shot themselves in the foot yet again. Because if you now thread a aluminium cup into a carbon fiber bottom bracket shell, that is going to cause serious corrosion issues. I mean, obviously, we would hope that people would put some kind of copper grease or some kind of waterproof grease on the threads first, but you can't guarantee that that grease is going to spread itself out properly, and you can't guarantee that that's going to stop the corrosion issue. What you're doing by creating a bunch of threads in the carbon fiber and with the threads on the aluminium is you're increasing the surface area massively, okay? So by increasing the surface area, you're going to get horrific corrosion issues with that. And the moment you do get some corrosion on that, and if you've ever tried to remove a stuck aluminium seat post from a carbon fiber frame, you know what I'm talking about. You get this horrible white powder everywhere, which is the corrosion, which is the oxidation of the aluminium material. You're never going to get that bottom bracket out. And in trying to get it out, you're going to destroy the bottom bracket threads because they're so soft. The aluminium threads will be eaten away and replaced with this glue-like corrosion substance, this concrete corrosion substance. And the carbon threads will just get absolutely eradicated the moment you try and twist that thing out. So yeah, absolutely ridiculous design. Like I say, I've only watched Raul's video on it, and I think I'm adding to what he said. So why do I say that Press-Fit is better? Because so many people have issues with Press-Fit BBs on their carbon fiber frames. And it's like, it's a bit of a meme really, isn't it? That, oh, another creaking bottom bracket from a carbon frame, and it just so happens to be Press-Fit. Well, as I stated in my previous video, which I do encourage you to go watch if you're interested in the subject in depth, is that the issue is not the technology. The issue is the application and the material chosen. Okay, so my titanium bike, my Lightspeed T1 SL, and my previous T2, and all the Lightspeed bikes I've sold in Brunei in the last 6 or 7 years have had a press fit PF30 bottom bracket. Actually, this one you're looking at right now. So they've had something like this. This is a screw type one. I just have a straightforward plastic cup type one. But basically something you push in from both ends, and this particular one you then screw into place and it holds tightly against the frame. The one I have in my frame is just two plastic cups that you push in from either end. Very, very simple indeed. Now, I have never had any creaking issues with my bottom bracket, and neither have any of my customers, ever. 6 years, many, many bikes, no issues, right? Why is that? Well, because the titanium bottom bracket tube, which is what it is, that's all it is, it's just a tube, honed out of something like 3 millimeter thick titanium. Okay, so it's incredibly thick on the walls, so it doesn't bend or distort. And then it's machined very precisely. And so when you come to push in your bottom bracket, the bottom bracket connects all the way around that hole, and it's a perfectly snug fit. And because it's a machined piece of titanium tube, it's also perfectly straight. So when you push your crank through it, there's no weird alignment issues with the bearings. Okay? With carbon fiber, it's a different story because they don't machine their bottom brackets in the same way. What they do is they mold their bottom brackets, okay? And molding, if you know, is a less accurate process than like CNC machining, for example. So the carbon fiber bottom bracket shells don't come out straight, and they don't come out of the molds perfectly round. And so what you do is you end up with these like stress points where when you push your bottom bracket in, it's only touching on certain locations of that carbon fiber bottom bracket tube, okay? And because it's only touching in certain locations, and you'll see this in other videos that I've done, for example, this one on why I'd never buy a Scott bike, that's a great example of what I'm talking about, it ends up creaking. And it's up to people like me in the video to sand out the inside of your bottom bracket shell, trying to get rid of those kind of like hot spots where they stick out into the shell, where the material is too much. Sand it out and then put in something like this that's threaded from both ends and that you can basically just screw in and tightly fit against the frame. And that usually eliminates those press fit issues. So the reason why people think press fit isn't good is not because the concept itself is bad, but the application and the material chosen is not good. Now, I would say that carbon fiber is the worst material to make a bottom bracket out of because it's molded and because it's very difficult to get right. It clearly is difficult to get right because none of the manufacturers seem to be able to do it. And my process of fixing that in the workshop is a little bit crude because all I'm doing is making the hole bigger. Now, the problem is if their bottom bracket is uneven, it's not perfectly round, that means some areas are too big and some areas are too small. And all I'm doing is sanding away the too small bits. So when you put in a bottom bracket into that sanded shell, it still doesn't touch all the way around because I've sanded away the material and just made the hole bigger. So then you end up having to use something like this. You no longer have a choice of just pressing in normal plastic cups because the normal plastic cups, again, won't fit properly. They'll wobble or they'll move. So like I say, my conclusion on that basis is that the carbon fiber is the problem. It's the material choice. It's a bit like, it's a silly example, but if you come to build a bridge, you can build a bridge out of stone or steel. You wouldn't choose to build the bridge out of cheese, for example, right? No matter how good of an engineer you are, no matter how you reinforce the bridge, no matter what kind of structure you decide to make, you could never build a safe and effective bridge out of cheese. And it's basically my opinion on carbon fiber. I don't really care what you do to it, whether you thread it or whether you make a press fit shell or whatever you do with it, or whether you push in an aluminium tube and thread that. No matter what you do with a carbon fiber bottom bracket shell, you will always get issues because of the manufacturing process and because of the material itself. Okay, it is not a suitable material for precision mounting bottom brackets in. And that is why I say PressFit is a better system, because in a titanium bicycle, it works fantastically. And it would also work fantastically in a steel bicycle and in an aluminium bicycle. There is one exception to this rule with regards to aluminium, however, and that is anything that uses a BB30 system. Now, the BB30 system can be found on bikes like this, like the Specialized Ales, and on some of the older aluminium Cannondale bikes. I believe they invented the system. The issue with BB30 is not that the shell is not precisely made. In fact, they're very precisely made. The problem is that they're pressing in a steel bearing directly into the softer aluminium, and over time that pressing in and pushing out of steel bearings actually causes damage to the softer aluminium shell. So that would be my only exception to the rule. So if you're going to get an aluminium frame, avoid BB30, the sort of Shimano standard BB86 with plastic cups is absolutely fine as for a PressFit system. PF30 again is absolutely fine with plastic cups. As long as you're pushing something softer into the aluminium shell, you should be absolutely fine. So there you go. That is the only exception to the rule. As long as that tube is nicely machined, it will work beautifully. So I would always favor, for a metal bike, if possible, a PressFit system. For carbon fiber, I would say sell your bike secondhand and buy a metal bike because as far as I can see, there's no solution. And when you look at the industry trying to produce these carbon fiber adaptations, constantly trying to solve problems, all that comes back to my mind is that they are admitting that carbon fiber is a terrible material in which to put a bottom bracket in, because they just can't get it right. They can't seem to get it right when it's threaded. They can't seem to get it right when they put in a threaded sleeve. They can't seem to get it right when it's press fit. So there you go. Now, I'm not saying, of course, that every carbon fiber bike out there has got a dodgy bottom bracket. I'm sure somebody somewhere is making a decent one. But I would advise to go, if you are going to do a silly thing like buy a carbon fiber bike, buy a PF30 bottom bracket, make sure it's round, okay, or sand it until it is round, and get something like this that threads in and tightens in position, so there's absolutely no way it's going to creak or move. And it also gives you a really strong and stiff bottom bracket shell with a very nice and true axle way for your axle to go through and make sure that you've got good bearing alignment. Now, of course, if the carbon bottom bracket is really bad, there's not much you can do about it, but this is definitely the best option. Don't go threaded. Certainly don't go threaded sleeve. And if this comes out with the carbon fiber thingy, yeah, run a mile, because that is just going to be a bad idea. So there you go. That's my opinions on this new technology and on threaded versus PressFit in general. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you stopping by today. I will get the Hambini reaction video out fairly shortly, hopefully. And as always, folks, whatever bike you're riding, do stay safe. Bye.